Howdy, folks. Happy Wednesday. Happy hump day. We're doing a show early today because of scheduling things. So we'll be doing a show probably around 1 o'clock tomorrow. We'll let you know about Friday. Should be back tomorrow. He drove basically halfway across the country over the last couple of days after a family vacation at Yellowstone Park. Again, I'm going to ask him. The first thing I'm going to ask is, did you see Yogi Bear? Russ, pre-show, go ahead.
Yeah, so I was reading an article this morning at azcentral.com, forget who the writer was, basically advocating for the NWHL to go under. And I got to tell you, I didn't like the article for a couple reasons. It really just took the players' side, the ones that say, hey, they're going to just sit out this year and not play, and this is great, and we'll watch this league go under, and it'll really help the sport. Like, I don't know if that's true. And the writer certainly doesn't know if that's true.
I'll continue this because, I mean, Peter, the thing that's going on right now with the women's leagues, and, you know, I mean, I basically followed the coverage of people like Haley Slavin from, and I'm probably butchering her last name, I apologize, from The Athletic, who's done some good reporting on this. But essentially, the CWHL folded. The group of players who played for the Canadian League would not go and sign with the NWHL. They're trying to, you know, I guess that the motivation here is to get the NWHL to fold so that a league could be formed under the auspices of the NHL. The NHL has been giving, you know, a pittance to both leagues to sort of keep them afloat. I don't know. First of all, and this is the thing that's the great unknown. Is the NHL going to, like, put in place a WNBA model type of Canadian or type of women's professional league? Nobody knows for sure if they're going to do that. So I sort of agree with what Russ is saying. It's a situation where you're hoping that they fold. Okay, well, there might not be a league if they fold.
Right, and that's the thing. It's like, just because the NHL hinted that they would like just one league to be around and it would make it easier if it was a clean slate, doesn't mean that if the NWHL folds this year, that these women will have a place to play next year.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that at all. And so what I'm noticing now is some of the women who said, hey, I wasn't going to play, they're starting to sign on. Because they're probably looking at the same thing and saying, why am I not playing at all when if this all goes under, I might not be playing for 3 or 4 years until the NHL forms a league and gets it going and builds. You know, it's like, it's not going to happen overnight.
Where are you going to play? You're wasting the best years of your life as a professional athlete. A lot of these women are top-notch caliber athletes who play in top-notch for countries that are going to compete for world championships and Olympics. They need to play hockey.
Yeah.
The fact that there is this incredible stalled level of action to address the importance of why we need a league and how to create one that operates in a way that is sustainable.
Right.
It's really troubling. And if you think about it, you have to be fair to the realities of economy here. The league needs to be efficient. It needs to play in places where there are going to be fans, where you're going to drive fan support. You probably have a pretty good idea based on the two leagues.
Mm-hmm.
It needs to be efficient in the way that you can move teams around. You need to be able to get them to where they're going to play games in an efficient, cost-effective manner that isn't like throwing them on the bus and slap shot.
Right.
Then you need to figure out where your ownership base comes from.
Right.
And who's going to be able to bankroll some of this? And frankly, the reality is it's the northeast of the United States and Canada, and it's in that area. And that's where you have to start. You can't throw a team in Vancouver because there may be a wealthy person who wants to own one there. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to put one in LA because all of a sudden there's a celebrity who believes in this and wants to throw money. Unless
they want to handle the travel costs of travel.
Exactly. It doesn't make sense. We need to build people who like, particularly the NHL needs to come in and say, how do we support this in a meaningful way that allows the game to prosper? Because if people are watching hockey, it's good for the NHL.
Yeah. Well, I think the main benefit for the NHL would be PR, because from what I've heard, and again, I'm no expert on this, there's been good reporting on it, and I would refer people to those articles to look at this more in depth. But the business model really doesn't work.
No.
I mean, if you're talking about a league for profit, then I don't think the NHL is going to get involved. And, I mean, these players want to make money. It's like they don't want to have to be like baseball players in the 1930s or 40s and working insurance jobs or other jobs or construction and then play hockey for a pittance. They want to make money.
Here's the other thing, too, the other facet of this. Now, some of the hockey players say, hey, we have issues with the NWHL. That's fine, but at least they paid you something. The CWHL didn't pay anybody anything.
Yeah.
And so that's one thing. The other thing is, as an example, I saw the NWHL tweeted out yesterday, they're teaming up with the Lightning, and Lightning made for girls hockey clinics on August 16th. This league goes under, all of that stops.
Mm-hmm.
How does that benefit the young female hockey fan base that wants to watch hockey players?
Yeah. Let me be really frank about this. There is one area of growth in Canada, the place where you can sell hockey to anyone. Okay. One area of growth in the entire country of 500,000 kids playing hockey. It's actually more than that, but that's the approximate number. One area, female. It's the only area that enrollment is growing. That's it.
Yeah.
Hockey Canada, Tom Rennie and his blowhard cohorts have their heads so far in the sand and they just don't care. And I can go on a rant about the Hockey Canada like you wouldn't believe, in their inefficiencies and stupidity, because I sit on a board of a hockey program here in Winnipeg, and basically Hockey Canada hand ties you to everything. It's ridiculous. There is so much desire to spread the game and stuff, but the growth is coming from women's hockey.
Mm-hmm.
Why isn't anyone nurturing it? Because at the end of the day, it's not just competition for you, but it's also viewers. It's also fans. You need to develop fans. Mm-hmm. And look, the amount of money that the economics, it would take 1,000 years for it to become equal. And we can go down the whole idea of whether people should be equal paid for the same kind of job. Yes, they should. Never going to disagree with that. But the economics aren't going to get it there. It's never going to be an economic threat to the NHL, particularly if you keep it in the areas where you have the rabid fan bases, the Montreals, the Torontos, the Bostons, the New Yorks. You put them in those places where the population is. You're not denting it. That's part of the business model problem. But you've got to find people, you've got to find people who will believe in the model and want to work to do it. If you had a number of wealthy owners come to the NHL and say, look, here's where we're at. We want to do this. We want to help grow the game. We're creating fans. You put the model together and you talk to the right people in the board of governors. Mm-hmm. They're going to force Gary to do something about it. Right now, the board of governors, they don't care. It's not in their wheelhouse. And the crazy thing is, someone who's on the senior executive committee, which is Mark Chipman, both his daughters played hockey. One of them lost her program when the University of North Dakota canceled the women's program. She's a goalie there. This should be right in his wheelhouse. And he's a pretty passionate guy. These are the people you need to get in touch with, not just banging on the front office door of the NHL going, okay, who wants to talk to us about women's hockey? You got to convince the other people. That's how business is done.
Yeah, the NHL involvement has got to be more than just transferring the $100,000 they were giving to the CWHL to the NWHL because the CWHL didn't exist. I mean,
here's another one last thing to complicate it. So Emily Kaplan wrote on ESPNW that there is that other league. Remember, we talked about it a year ago. Well, now the guy's name is Brian Hicks, and he's come out, and it's the PWHPA. Okay.
Okay.
And what he is saying, and again, I'm excited to help achieve our goal. Having a sustainable league that we want by the 2021 season is a goal. Okay. You know what, dude? and he lives in Wayne, New Jersey. Here's my answer to him. When you actually get a league and have a draft with players and have owners like Peter said, then come out and talk about it. Until then, it's just talk.
Yeah, and that, I mean, do you think that the players who vacated the CWHL are going to immediately go to this league when, I mean,
I don't know. Like that's a great question.
The narrative has been set is that the only way that this is going to go forward is if the NWHL dies. And I mean, and now if you put up another league, then that just extends that, that life, that competition between the two leagues. And I mean, it's just a mess. And I don't know what the right answer is, but I think right now, the way things are going, they're not going to find a home. And I think there's a value in women's hockey. I have been to one women's hockey game, Buffalo Buttes, a couple years ago. I would be more than willing to cover it if it was, essentially, and then don't take this as the wrong thing, a serious league. Right now, it's not. I don't think it is a serious league. Okay. But I don't know where it's going to go.
I think that's fair. I think honestly, at some point, this will all flesh out, right? Do I think it'll all flesh out by the 2021 season, like this other potential league says? No, I don't.
No.
I think more players will come back and play this year than are willing to say right now because they want to remain strong. But I'm not going to blame them if they go back and play for the same reasons Peter said.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Wednesday, July 17th, 2019.
I'm Peter Tessier in muggy Winnipeg.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology. Same deal here.
And I'm Michael Agello in overcast Buffalo, and this is the Hockey Buzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. Okay, we'll start with the news that popped last night. First, Elliot Friedman and then Jeff Baker from the Seattle Times reported that Ron Francis, ex-general manager of the Carolina Hurricanes, will be and is the new general manager of the Seattle expansion franchise, yet to be named. Although I guess Don Cherry said he would go for the Totems. I know people are holding out for the Kraken. That's for another webcast. But
right.
let's talk about Francis, because I think the main focus of Francis over the last couple of years is that he got jobbed by Thomas Dundon in terms of there was a philosophical divide, and he lost his job. I think he deserves a lot of credit for where Carolina went last year in terms of the conference final.
I think that helped get him his job.
Yeah, and I think this is a really, really good hire, Russ. What do you think?
I do too. I think if we go back and look at the edict that Tom Dundon set for Ron Francis, basically saying we need to be more exciting, make trades. And he didn't make trades, so then he was gone, right? Well, now he's in a place where they're not going to say that to him. They're not. There's not going to be any edict like that at all. So he is going to get to build a team once again. He's going to get to manage a cap once again. And I believe he'll be successful once again. I think he should never have been fired out of Carolina. But again, when an owner comes in and tells you you have to do something and it didn't happen, and to Francis's credit, he didn't just make trades to make trades. He could have done that, right, to keep his job.
True.
Peter?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have an issue with Ron Francis as a GM. I think it speaks a little more to old school thinking, and I'm not going to go out and sort of poke the idea of Ron Francis isn't deserving of a job. That's not it. It speaks more to the idea that we recite that the NHL is still in a situation where it brings around names. Now, if you're a new franchise, you want to point. You've got a base of people that are aware of hockey. They have some AHL or WHL exposure through the Thunderbirds, Everett Silvertips, and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
They have a connection to Vancouver. They're keen, but you're going to start. Now you're building up what's in your organization, what you want people to identify with. It's really easy to identify with people who are winners and essentially Hall of Famers and that pedigree of of experience.
Mm-hmm.
Ron Francis brings that. You can sell that to a fan base. It helps.
To both leagues,
right?
He brings gravitas.
He brings gravitas. He brings something you can work around. He's also a well-spoken guy. He's got a very distinguished look. Like, he's a handsome man. Like, it's a good thing for that. What was interesting that came out last night was, and I'm just going to do a little bit of reading here and pull this up, is, and I don't know where this was taken from, and I'm just going to read the quote. The team's new hockey administration director, Alexandra Mandrycky, was tasked with running an analytical study of past moves by Francis the week of July 4th holiday to confirm whether his style meshed with what NHL Seattle had been looking for. So I think I'm going to assume that came from the Seattle Times article that came out about this. I don't know where, because I just saw it quoted, but it seems legit. So the NHL, the Seattle franchise has hired Alexandra, who's a very well-respected data scientist. Let's just use that term. Analytics data science, very well respected. She was in Vancouver at the draft, meeting with the team there. They were talking about things. They wanted her involved in with Luecki in the hiring of the GM. So let's take a look at where Ron Francis came from, and remember who was part of Ron Francis's and Carolina's team. Eric Tulsky.
Yeah.
Now, if you're going to use your data, and I'm not picking on Alexandra, I'm picking on the process, but I'm just going to use this.
Right.
Shouldn't she be the first person to say, wait a second, you want me to run a model on him in a vacuum? Because you don't know who was in his ear. You don't know what his scouts were telling him. You don't know what his data people were telling him. You don't know what their process was unless he revealed something to it. But Ron's on the out. He wants to be in hockey. If I'm sitting in that interview and I'm talking and I have my first conversations with them and they want to know about my trade philosophy and stuff like that, I, of course, am letting them think I am the brains behind it.
Right.
This is interview 101. I could go into NASA and pretend I know something about astrophysics. As long as I can convince them I do, I just better not screw up once I get the job. That is what an NHL GM is.
Right. And
you can be the smartest guy in the room. You can be anything you want. You can convince anyone. Once you get the job, don't screw up. And you'll probably get another shot because you'll convince someone else. That's what's wrong with the cycle. And that's not against Ron Francis. It's not against Alexandra. It's really against the idea that you can't go and say, well, this is what the Hurricanes did in a Ron Francis, and look at it in a vacuum without understanding who else was around making those decisions.
Right. And there are other factors like, what budget he had to work with. I mean, all he has to do is point to his draft record, Russ. And you look at 2013, Elias Lindholm, 5th over Brett Pesce, a 3rd round pick, Nedeljkovic, a 2nd round pick in 2014, Hanifin, Aho, Nicolas Roy in 2015, Jake Bean. I mean,
that's Tony McDonald. That's he's director of scouting, and he's retired now.
We had this conversation at the draft, particularly with Shane, about what goes into building those scouting departments and who's talking to who. Ron Francis may be an excellent listener and understanding the network that scouts use, and that could give you a head over heels advantage than another team if you've worked the right networks and you understand who your scouts are and who's going to go around, but you empower them and you listen to them and you give them the tools. That's just as important. So let's go back to that comment. We don't know what they looked at. Maybe the moves were simply draft moves. And if you're a franchise that is just an expansion franchise that's going to have to start drafting and building up things, you're probably looking right now and going, wait a second. We just watched the last expansion franchise go to the Stanley Cup final, and now they're in salary cap hell.
Right.
Yeah.
We can't do that.
Well,
We need some, and so you might be looking at other things. Not, and they said the term moves. Well, the moves could be, that's a very broad based thing. So again, in fairness to Alexandra and NHL Seattle, those moves could be exactly what you just said. The drafting, what you did underneath, maybe what you did in terms of how you develop players.
Mm-hmm.
How long did you keep them in the minors? How long did you keep them in the as junior players and stuff? What were their game starts like as you ease them into the NHL? All those things. So, so in that case, there could be some incredibly intriguing stuff about having Ron Francis as a GM.
And Russ, his resume. I mean, not only the draft, not only the players that were drafted, but the fact that he has to be given credit for what the team did this year because he was responsible for assembling most of the talent. Plus, some of his depth draft picks and some players that he acquired via trade, like Sorella, who was traded to Chicago recently, won the Calder Cup. So I mean, I think that what Peter's saying, that I'm sure that's a factor, but also I think this guy knows how to put together a scouting staff, and he's going to have almost a little under 2 years to put together an organization to be ready for the expansion draft and to be ready for the 2021 draft. So, I mean, making this move this early, I think, is a smart move.
This was the issue, and Luke DeCock wrote about it. He said the owner seems to be set on big changes to get Carolina over the hump, while Francis was committed to patience.
Right.
That Dundon-style, this is from an older article, Dundon-style, bold moves, sweeping changes. He's going to invest heavily in analytics on both the hockey and business side, looking for any advantage to press. Patience has not been a hallmark of his business history, and it's the opposite of what Ron Francis is.
Yeah, this smacks of what Philadelphia did with Hextall. Hextall was too patient, and Dundon was, Mr. Daddy Warbucks who wants to come. Although Daddy Warbucks who doesn't spend.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. So I mean, we'll see how this unfolds. But I think it's an interesting hire. I think it's a good hire. It's very similar in terms of an establishment GM as McPhee was in Vegas. Now, I grant your point that I'm sure Francis will not put himself in cap jail like Vegas did. But Vegas had an owner who smelled blood in the water when he gets to the Cup final.
Yeah.
And after year one, he says, "Okay, I want to keep this going. Let's trade for Pacioretty. Let's sign Stastny. Let's get Mark Stone." I don't think that scenario is not going to play out in Seattle. Teams have learned they're not going to give extra draft picks and young players to prevent other players from being picked off of their roster. They're going to say, "Go ahead and pick them." And we
fair to Vegas.
Lesson number one for all new NHL owners, that there's only one right now. Never drink the Kool-Aid when your goalie is hot.
Right.
That stuff is so addictive. It's the OxyContin of sports.
And
I'm not making light of OxyContin addiction.
Right.
What I'm trying to say is your team's unstoppable when you have what Marc-Andre Fleury did in the spring of 2018.
Right.
Like everyone wants that. You hope for it.
And you can say Vegas got screwed out of advancing further because of the penalty in Game 7, but still they really now, I mean, they're still over the cap. They still haven't traded David Clarkson's contract. They're in cap jail right now. So
I will say this though. They're a little different story than Seattle too, because Seattle, they know what they have fan-wise there. Vegas really didn't know, right? So they signed on a lot of new fans.
Right.
And to be honest, if let's say they didn't go on that run, and let's say they had been building all this time, they probably would get swept over by the Raiders coming into town.
Right.
But now they've been the exciting team in town. So the Raiders, believe it or not, even though I know people think NFL just rules everywhere, the Raiders may get like more media coverage because they're the NFL, but in people's hearts, the Knights are going to be their team. And they did accomplish that goal.
Yeah, I just wonder, Russ, whether Seattle will emulate Vegas and when they sign a big free agent, have dancing girls at the Seattle-Tacoma airport.
This is, with the Raiders, anything's possible, man.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to a trade yesterday, a rather peculiar trade in a way. Zach Smith traded by the Ottawa Senators to the Chicago Blackhawks for Artem Anisimov, 2 centers, a little over the age of 30. both signed for next season and the year after that. The difference in the deal is Anisimov is making over $4.5 million. Zach Smith is making 3.2 something, 3.25, I believe. And so the Blackhawks gain an extra 1.3 million in cap space. And from what I understand, Russ, and reading some analysis about this deal, that was the main motivation here, because they right now the Hawks have Brendan Perlini as an RFA that they need to get signed. They don't have a ton of cap space next year, as we both know. Dylan Strome is an RFA. His ELC expires. So does Alex DeBrincat. They have Brandon Saad dropping off after next season, but I think they need more cap room to get both of those guys locked up. So I think the motivation here from Chicago was purely money.
Yeah. And if you really wanted a fourth line center that bad, okay, you got one. It's interesting because the first year I took over a fantasy hockey team, I had Zach Smith, and he scored the 25 goals, right?
Mm-hmm.
But even I knew that wasn't for real. And again, all you have to do is looking at the shooting percentage, 20.7. Think about that.
Yeah.
20.7. Totally unsustainable. Now, the next year, he still had 16 goals, but he was already down to 11.7.
Right.
And he's just fallen off since then. You know, he might get you 9-10 goals a year. And Anisimov at least still has the ability to get you 20-25 a year. But you have to pay for that. Chicago can't pay for that. So the interesting thing about Chicago is where they're pretty much at now is they have to draft well and get some of those guys to the NHL quicker, and then hope that they, you know, can make some trades where they get great gains like Dylan Strome, like, hey, you know, the other team didn't value him, change the scenery. That's a lot to gamble on because of what you did to win those championships that you did. So right now, I can't tell you that this is a successful strategy, because for every good move they make, you have to make one of these moves too.
Now, Peter, from just like looking at the situation here, they have Dylan Strome. Dylan Strome played very well in a half season with the Hawks. A lot of people assume now he's their future number 2 center. Maybe that's jumping to conclusions, but I think they really had to. You have Anisimov, who was their number 2, then became their number 3 center, making $4.5 million. Now, if they slot Smith in as the number 3, he's at least making more what you would consider number 3 center money, and that, I think, was part of the motivation for the deal. Yeah. By the way, Brandon Saad has another year after next year, so he's got 2 more years at $6 million. He's 26 years old, and some people think he's washed up at 26, but
he is close. He was never fast.
Yeah, but what do you think of this deal, Peter?
I mean, look, it's just shuffling the deck chairs that we know Stan Bowman has become reasonably efficient at over the past couple seasons as he manages the salary cap, and you know, you save $1 million here, and that's what he has to do. You know, I can't imagine that you know, we're not going to see this again next year. I don't know who he's going to shuffle, but it's going to keep happening as he has to up other guys, and eventually, and we talked about this pre-show, Mike, like, at some point we're going to see a buyout or an LTIR with someone,
right?
And you know, there'll be a blood clot, there'll be a this, there'll be a that, and the next thing you know, all of a sudden there's $5 or $6 million of cap relief, and off you go. And that's just how it works. The interesting thing is maybe he needs to buy another year. We get to the expansion draft. Actually, that's 2 years, right?
Right.
And all of a sudden there's another grace period of, you know, a buyout grace period. And frankly, I think that's something I just don't see that not happening. And I don't understand why players, like, yes, you want your contract, you signed a contract, but if you're going to just get tossed away to do nothing, why not just be released completely to do nothing and still get a crap ton of money? Right? Like, I just don't think, I think people say, oh, it's not going to be on it'll come back. I have no doubt in my mind that there will be, and it may not be a long window. It may not be a big one. It may have some other conditions in it, but there will be.
Yeah, there'll be something to save the GMs. There's no question. The other thing about it is, if you look at the depth chart for the Blackhawks, it is an amazing game of moving chairs around, like Peter said. It really is, because every year now, if you're a Blackhawks fan, you probably are gonna get 5 new players in your lineup, maybe more in some years. But the weird thing is, and what Peter was saying, if the next bad injury, the one they can get the money off the books, happens to be Corey Crawford, then they're in worse shape.
Yeah.
And that could be the next one. We all look at the blue line, but it could be Corey Crawford.
Well, that's the whole reason they signed Leonard, because they think Leonard is capable of being that number one based on the year that he had with the Islanders, and people are factoring in the fact that
it's a 1-year deal.
Right, it's a 1-year deal, but but there's already talk that if he plays well, he's the replacement for Crawford, but there's no guarantees there, and also there's no guarantee that Leonard is going to have as good a year as he did last year, because he was playing behind a Barry Trotz defense, and this team is not as good defensively as a Barry Trotz team. Now, I find it interesting though with the Hawks that they trade for Andrew Shaw is making almost $4 million, and then all of a sudden with this deal they had to save money on this deal, but I don't understand the great benefit of trading for Andrew Shaw. I know he was on that team before. I don't know whether he can play center anymore, if he's just a winger, but he's making $3.9 million, and I don't know what he really contributes other than sandpaper.
Okay, but I think he only does contribute sandpaper. I really do. I don't think he can play center anymore. But here's the other thing with the Hawks. So let's say Leonard does have another Vezina-type year. Where are they getting the money from to extend him? He's not signing a 1-year deal again, ever.
Well, no, but Crawford's a UFA. That's the thing.
Is he a UFA next year? I thought
he's got one more year.
He's got one more year.
He's got one more year. So after that, his money drops off, which is, I believe, $6 million. Yeah, $6 million. And
Leonard's asking for $7 million, which is reasonable.
Well, he may very well. I'm just saying they're going to cross that bridge when they come to it. But I would say with reasonable certainty that Corey Crawford's, unless he has some sort of renaissance, this is his last year with Chicago. I
would ask Peter this question because I think I know the answer. Good year or bad year, Peter? I'm pretty sure Leonard's going to, if he has a great year, is going to test the UFA market rather than re-sign with the Blackhawks.
Or he signs,
or he re-signs early, and the Blackhawks identify, knowing the Crawford's $6 million off, and they just shuffle. They just put that money into Leonard and say, "Let's go." He could look. Let's not forget the one thing: like the Blackhawks have found a way to stay relevant even if they're missing the playoffs. Yeah. They are. They could be a playoff team next year.
They could be.
They could be, particularly if Leonard plays like he did last year. That's the big question. If he is, you've got the second biggest building in the NHL. You've got Chicago. You've got Patrick Kane. You've got DeBrincat. You've got all these guys. Like, you're in this pedigree of an organization that has turned itself around. It's a very appealing place to play.
Yeah, and remember they had a great second half under Jeremy Colleton.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You've got a limited window right now because Taves and Kane are. I think Kane's 31 and Taves is 30, or vice versa.
Yeah.
So you've got maybe a 2 or 3 year window while they're still at the top of their game. The problem is, as we talked about before we went live, Duncan Keith is 36 and has got 4 more years left in the contract. They can't buy it out because if they buy it out, the cap recapture kicks in. So more than likely, if he doesn't get traded, it's going to be a Marian Hossa situation. I know, but I always say that, but I think that's the only logical conclusion. And Brent Seabrook's deal, which is 5 more years at $6.8 million, which is probably the worst contract in the NHL, is heavy signing bonus. So there's no, or literally little benefit if you buy him out. So, I mean, they're stuck with those guys, and that's a problem. That's why they bolstered their blue line with Dahan and Oli Mata, and they're going to try to take a run this year and the next couple years, because after that, Kane and Taves start to drop off, and they have 4 years left in their contract. So
the interesting thing is, Keith did have a good second half too, because he ended up with 40 points, but the interesting thing about Keith is no power play points, 3 power play assists. That's crazy.
Right, and more than likely Gustafson's going to be the point guy in the power play because that's who Colleton used. And, Boquist he may make the team as a rookie, but he might be the future guy. But, yeah, right. I mean, you don't have anybody else other than them besides, Keith. I think Keith was relegated to the second power play, Russ. Yeah, so. Okay, couple signings in the league. Yesterday. Start with the Jakub Vrana contract, signed a 2-year deal with the Caps. It was $3.55 million for Vrana. Russ, what did you think of this deal?
It's a good deal. I think the Capitals kept the right guy if it came down to him or Burakovsky, because Vrana has definitely scored more. He scored more goals. This is not, for Flyers fans, a comparable to Travis Konecny. Konecny has scored more goals.
Yeah.
This is all this does was told you what the minimum now that somebody would offer Travis Konecny and he would turn down would be $3.55. Mm-hmm. So now if you look at Konecny, because Vrana's got 37 goals the last 2 years and Konecny's got 48. So there's no way Konecny's only getting $3.55. So now he's getting pretty much $3.75 or $4.25. That's the range.
Yeah. No. I mean, look at it this way. And there is definitely a formula going on right now. And of course, I'm going to use the 2 Leaf RFAs as the example. Andres Janssen and Kapanen both had 20-goal seasons. First time they scored 20 goals in their first full seasons. The years before, Janssen scored 1 goal. I think Kapanen had like 7 in half a season. They scored 20 goals last year. They get 3- and 4-year contracts in the 3.4 to 3.5 range. Vrana, 1 year, 24 goals, and he gets 3.35, not 3.55, but 3.35. Right. So it's the same. Konecny has scored 20 goals twice, 2 years in a row. That immediately increases his value to probably over $4 million. But Peter, what did you think of this signing?
Yeah, I like it. I think it's a smart, decent deal. I mean, I don't follow the player that much and everything, but I do know that I do think it's just it's a decent thing, and it's not glamorous. It's not like this big news. It's not like earth shaking, but sometimes it's little things that make sense, that are logical to both sides, that are the ones that just form the basis of what you need as a team. And no one's going, oh, it's dumb, or no one's going, is this. They're just saying, yeah, okay, that's good. And that's the right way to do business in some cases. Not everything has to be a splash.
Right.
I will tell you this. The one thing about Vrana is he could score more goals than 24. He can.
Yeah.
He has a high ceiling. This is a kid who's fast, and he does know how to score goals. He knows how to go where he knows where to go without the puck. You give him more opportunity, he will score more. So I think this could still be a value contract for the Capitals.
Yeah, and he's going to be a top 6 guy probably on that team. So if not third line, but probably top 6 because he's got the offensive chops. Now, another signing that was curious was the 2-year deal to Ryan Donato with the Minnesota Wild, $1.9 million per, and coming off
that's great.
Coming off the way he finished the year with the Wild, Russ, I mean, this is a good gamble.
It's a great gamble because I have to save money if I'm the Minnesota Wild. Fans and media are counting them as dead, Mike Agello included. If they're not going to be dead, Ryan Donato is going to be a big reason why they're not going to be dead. And if he's going to get the power play opportunities that he should get, he will get power play goals with that shot. That was the one thing the Bruins sort of missed on because they just didn't have the patience and the time to let that happen for them because of the kind of team they are, and they wanted to get the Stanley Cup, and they did. Mm-hmm. So Donato, they traded him, and they got a guy who does perform exactly the way you want to perform in the playoffs, and Charlie Coyle. But Donato's going to outscore Coyle. I think we all know that. If we don't all know that, he's going to outscore Charlie Coyle. I'll tell you that.
Right, and just to the little jab that you made, because it's not. No, but it's you have to put it in context. I'm not saying that the Wild are bad. I'm just saying that the rest of the Central Division, and Peter, please try to, if you feel the urge to back me up here, who are they better than? They're not better than Nashville. They're not better than Winnipeg. They're not better than St. Louis. No. They're not better than I don't. They may be on par with Chicago, but I think
they're better than Chicago. Stop.
Oh,
that line, no, they're better than Chicago. And I'm going to tell you this: they could be better than Nashville. Who's saying Nashville is going to have another great season?
Are they better than Colorado? No.
I'm not signing on for another great Nashville season yet. I'm not there yet. I
think honestly, okay. When you look at the Central, there are teams that are teams that should. This is the way I think teams are trending. The Blues are going to trend flat. Like you can't get any higher. I don't expect them honestly to repeat, but maybe they do. They're flat. Who's trending up? I think Dallas is trending up.
Yes.
Okay.
Colorado
is certainly trending up.
Mm-hmm.
Who's trending down?
Nashville.
Nashville's trending down.
Maybe Winnipeg.
Maybe Winnipeg too.
Maybe Winnipeg is trending down. Who's trending flat? Chicago.
I think Chicago's trending a little up. Not
maybe a little up. Well, see, I have Chicago in the wait and see. And who's trending where we don't know what they're doing? The Minnesota Wild.
Right.
That's where I can't say they're going down, but I sure as heck can't say they're trending up. I just don't understand what the Wild are doing.
They're getting cheaper.
They're getting cheaper.
All the deals that they made. All the deals. Now they haven't traded Zucker yet, but I'm prepared for a Zucker deal at some point because it's just been out there for too much.
Yeah.
The Granlund deal for Fiala. The Coyle deal for Donato, all were trading salary players, higher salaries for younger, lower salaried guys. They've got Koivu, who's coming back from a major injury. You've got Parise, you've got Suter. I mean, they have a core of older guys. You've got Dubnyk and Net. I mean, those guys, I mean, probably
they were good until the Dumba injury. You have to admit that they were.
No, they were fine. And and I like Bruce Boudreau as a coach, but I mean, remember, Bruce Boudreau was kept by Fenton because he's got a year left, and he didn't want to. Basically, didn't want to fire him because then he'd have to hire another coach and pay two coaches. Right. So he's a lame duck right now. They have a bad month. He's gone. So that's why I'm saying right now things are unsettled, and the only team in that division, I mean, I agree with your assessment that the Jets and the Preds are trending down. And if all of a sudden Pekka Rinne wakes up and he's Methuselah and he can't play goal anymore, then they're in deep trouble.
So let's talk a little bit about the Wild and what they are, and we're not sure, with this. I'm looking at their page. Zach Parise turns 35 in 13 days.
Mm-hmm.
No. 11 days.
Mm-hmm.
Ryan Suter, he turns 35 in January.
Mm-hmm.
Each of them have, including this coming season, 6 years left. When does the drop come?
Right.
You have virtually untradeable contracts. When does that plummet come?
And they
years. I think they have like 2 years.
And they've dodged bullets because Parise had a serious injury a couple years ago that he came back from and is still an effective player.
Yeah.
And people did not think Suter was going to start last season because of the injury that he had, and he played really well in spite of that. So they've dodged bullets, but
exactly. There's a revolver with 2 bullets in it.
Right.
And you can spin that chamber around all you want, but eventually there's 2 shots coming and we know who it's going to be at. So maybe you can trade Zucker, but what's left after those guys?
Well, all right, I'm going to tell you. So
Mikko Koivu.
No, but forget that.
He's only got a year left, I believe.
Yeah, but I mean, there's still nothing there.
No. You could count on better years this year out of Greenway, out of Cunnin, and out of Eriksson Ek. Now, whether they'll be to their potential, I don't know. But you could count on better years for them, I believe, because now that they have some experience under their belt and they're going to have more opportunity with the trades they made, I think that'll help them. Here's the big wild card. When Zach Parise can't play anymore, I'm knocking on Kaprizov's door and I'm saying, come here and play on our top line.
Yeah, and
I'll pay you handsomely.
Yeah. Now here's one thing.
Let's hear Peter's retort to that.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, so again, you're hoping for these players are all going to take a step up.
Well, that's what a lot of people
do. They do it all at the same time? Do they all move in the same linear fashion to develop into as the others drop off or whatever? I guess you've got 34, 31, 36, 34, and that those players, that Stahl, Koivu, Zuccarello, and Parise.
Mm-hmm.
Then you've got 34, 30, and 29 on your back end. Spurgeon's one of those. He's a UFA next season. One's Suter, the other is Pattern, and then Brad Hunt. Devin Dubnyk is actually 33 years old. Like, I mean, this is a core that is aging, and at some point, we know with aging cores, you got to interject them. I just don't think, Russ. What if I look at the Minnesota Wild? I say, I've got these two guys with maybe, as Mike said, 2 years left of their potentially best work.
Yeah.
Well, here's
what am I doing to take advantage of that? Because after that, they're just massive boat anchors of liability.
Well, here's a detail in their contracts that I'm sure will be, and we saw with Luongo once the money that was coming in dropped off to like $1 million that he decided to retire. These are deals that are subject to cap recapture.
Yeah,
they were signed in July of 2012, and in 3 more years. Both Suter and Parise, $9 million, $8 million, $6 million. After the 21-22 season, $2 million, $1 million, $1 million. If they both retire, but the problem is, if they retire, they get subject to cap recapture, and it's a double hit because they're at the same time. So again, do they go on LTIR? Do they avoid? Do they avoid that? Do they get traded? We don't know what happens. But, I mean, the motivation is probably that their window for those two guys is 3 more years. And then probably, unless they're still playing at a high level at age 37 and 38, that's when they retire.
Yeah, I agree. And then I think within – like if I'm looking at it, Minnesota should be trying to bring in Kaprizov next year.
Yeah.
Like next year would be the year to bring him in. In a couple more years, you'll get Boldy. You'll get Johansson. So there'll definitely be you have 2 years now, I think, where you can compete. And then I think you're going to take a step back. And then they do have other prospects. They have been drafting better in the last couple of years. And so I think then it will take 2 more years to get back to at least respectability. But yeah, Peter makes a good point, and I agree with it. But I can't look at them and just summarily say they're going to be in last place in that division.
No, I just don't know what's going to happen. No, I think they're the biggest question mark in this. And I think I have all the time in the world for Bruce Boudreau as a coach. I think he's a solid coach. I think he can make lemonade out of lemons if given, and he's going to have to, depending on what happens this year, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know if what the GM is doing is in sync with what the coach has the ability to do.
I think
that's where I'm confused.
I think Boudreau is being set up for failure here because I think that these moves are they can't move Parise, they can't move Suter, they can't move they're not going to move guys like Dumba who are younger players who are established, and the moves that they made, I don't think were made for them to be competitive right now.
Yeah,
I think that adding Fiala and Donato means improving their overall talent, being cheaper. I think they're going to continue to go in that direction. Maybe they trade Spurgeon by the trade deadline. I just think it's not conducive to them being a contender in that division, and I just see them either last or second last. So, I mean, we'll see. I mean,
I'll give you a scenario too, because Randy brought it up.
Okay.
He goes, well, they don't have any trade assets. Well, I named a bunch of them. And actually,
Spurgeon for sure.
Yeah.
Kaprizov could be one of them. What if next year Fenton talks to him, he goes, I don't want to come to Minnesota, but I'll play for LA.
Right.
Fenton calls up LA and says, hey, give us Gabe Velarde. We know his back's getting better. I'm just giving you a scenario.
Right.
Would LA do that? Yeah, I think LA would do that.
Right. No, they have. I mean, they have assets. I mean, hell, if somebody's looking for a veteran depth center at the end at the trade deadline, and Koivu is healthy, that's an asset.
So I think you Mike, the whole setup to fail thing, and maybe it's not as diabolical as that, but I like the way you just, I understand that. This is Boudreau's last year.
Right.
This team, if it doesn't do anything, they are going to be big sellers at the deadline.
Right. That's true.
Right. And then, thanks, Bruce. We appreciate it.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. We appreciate your work. You come in. We have to go in a different direction now.
Right.
And whatever, if there is a bit of, so let's say animosity or whatever between Boudreau and Fenton, how this all went down, that's between them and off they go.
Sure.
Bruce Boudreau will not be without a job for long.
No, he could be.
What becomes very curious is you had the coach, you had a solid team. You've tinkered with it. You've done some things. You pulled diamonds out of Eric Stahl.
Yes.
And now, what is your plan? Because that becomes very difficult when you think about, like, there's some assets in the pipe in Minnesota and stuff that's not really the issue, but what's the plan and how long is it going to turn around and who's going to guide it if you're not using Boudreau? Like, and I'll lay dollars to donuts that Fenton has already thought about. I need to know who my next coach is now and start identifying guys. So it'll be very interesting to watch who that next person is, because it won't be paying someone of Boudreau's caliber on another deal if things go to crap this year.
Yeah, 2 more contracts, and then we'll take a couple questions and end the show at that point. Just want to touch on this one, Russ. Cal Peterson, a 3-year deal with the LA Kings. The curious thing about this one is year 1 is a 2-way deal. Years 2 and 3 are 1-way deals. He gets paid $1 million on the 3rd year. I mean, obviously, I think the conclusion is either Jack Campbell or Jonathan Quick by that 3rd year. Not that $1 million is going to really sway them, because it's under the amount that you can bury in the American Hockey League. But I get the feeling that they're making a path for Peterson to be either their starter or their backup relatively soon.
I think they're making it for the starter. I think that's why they signed him in the first place.
Yeah.
That is the plan. I think it's a good plan. They're not rushing him, and they're not rushing Quick out. And I think all of this will work out in the end for him. So I think it's smart.
Okay. The other signing that we debated about a little bit on our mutual chat during the day was the Josh Archibald signing with the Oilers. 1 year, $1 million. I mean, that in terms of salary, that's fine. But I look at what is going on with the Oilers right now, and I come to the conclusion that anybody who thinks that they're a playoff team is delusional, because to go back to our Central conversation, I think the 5 teams are coming out of the Central. I think the top 3 and the 2 wild cards are coming out of the Central, unless it's you factor in the fact that the division is so strong that they'll knock each other down, or it allows a team in the Pacific to get one of the wild cards. But I think the Central is the much stronger of the 2 divisions, and I don't think Edmonton is going to come close to being in the top 3 in the Pacific.
Yeah. I look at it and I say that's probably true. So I look at Archibald and I'm like, well, why are the Coyotes giving him up? All right, so he was the 9th best scorer on that team, right? So they're probably like, well, 12 goals. We could find 12 goals. We found him in Connor Garland. Garland maybe will get 17 this year. So we can make it up in other areas. But when you look at Archibald, again, it was pretty much a career year. He took twice the amount of shots he's ever taken in his life. He went from 80 shots the year before to scoring 5 goals in 39 games to 164 shots and scoring 12 goals. So my question is, how much ice time is it worth it to get Josh Archibald to 12 goals with the Edmonton Oilers, and maybe even 15? Yeah. That's the equation you have to look at. The problem with the Oilers is the problem that like teams like the Rangers had years ago. You've got too many 3rd and 4th liners.
Yeah, Russ, you have 3 lines of 3rd line or below caliber players.
Right.
And let's be honest, on 50% of NHL teams right now, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins is a 3rd line center. That's right. What he is.
Yeah.
But the evidence is there.
Yes.
There's no more, oh, this guy's going to turn it around. This is, we're going to finally see. That's what he is. Sorry, Oilers fans. It's a bust.
Yeah, when you're like the Buffalo Sabres back at the when the lockout ended, the 06-07 Sabres, they always used to say they don't have a number 1 line, they have 3 number 2 lines. And that team got to 2 conference finals. When you have 3 number 3 lines, you finish in last place. And that's where the Oilers are right now. You've got Connor McDavid. He's the best player in the league. You got Draisaitl, who's excellent. You don't have anything around it. I mean, Nugent Hopkins, either they move him to the wing on one of the top 2 lines, or he's your 3rd line center. Other than that, what is around? Ty Ratty's not there anymore, but they re-signed Alex Chason. There's not much around them until they start promoting their young kids like Yamamoto and Puljujärvi and Bouchard. And those guys, they would be stupid if they rushed them, Russ. So
that's the crazy part.
Let me list you.
Playoff team.
Let me list you the Oilers forwards. I saw an Oilers guy put it out. Their whole roster. Let's just list it off here.
Sure.
Draisaitl, McDavid, Castian, Benson, Nugent Hopkins, Chason, Lucic, Merity, Nygaard, Granlund, Brodziak, Gagne with Cave and Archibald, Klefbom, Larson, Nurse, Benning, Russell, Jones, Person, Koskinen, Smith. That's the roster. Yeah. That is as ugly a roster aside from 3-4 players.
Now, you know,
one of them is the best player in the world. It's an absolute injustice to that young man that the Edmonton Oilers cannot figure out a solution to the problems that everyone in the hockey world sees.
Yeah, I'll extend this with no fear of getting raked over the coals by David Staples. In 2 years, if they continue to be a laughing stock, do you think Connor McDavid's not going to lose patience? Of course he is.
I think
if I'm Connor McDavid and you've just paid me whatever it is, my $13 million for the last 3 years.
Yeah.
It's better for him to walk away from the game than to keep this charade up. Like it almost is. Like what does Cates have to do? Daryl Cates have to do to take advantage of this generational talent. If this is what was going on with Sidney Crosby, and remember, Draisaitl is the Malkin to Crosby. Right? He's McDavid's Malkin. Like, yes, they had some tough years, but they got it together. And there is no indication that anyone in Edmonton knows how to solve problems.
Right. And just one thing here. They've got 7 unrestricted free agent forwards. 7. Gagne, Cassian, Granlund, Brodziak, Archibald, Nygaard, and Yurko. Then that Cap Friendly has on their starting lineup. None of them make over $3 million. They're all cheaper players. Draisaitl and McDavid are locked up long term. Lucic has got 4 more years. Nugent Hopkins has 2 more years. So they will have a changeover, but it's not going to be a changeover of the money that really counts.
Right. They have less than $3 million of cap space, which is crazy for the team that they're fielding. But I'll give you one dark horse and a quick little story. So there's a guy, Joseph Gambardella, who plays for Bakersfield. He had 29 goals last year. So I was sitting at a tournament once, and I was sitting with a director of scouting. And at the end of the tournament, the director of scouting looked at me and said, who would you sign out of this group in this game that we watched? And it was UMass Lowell against somebody else. And I said, I would sign Gambardella. And he said, okay. And then he goes, well, we're signing somebody else, told me who it was. And sure enough, a couple hours later, the Oilers signed Gambardella. And he's a guy out of Staten Island. He's 25 now. He's a guy who has a power side to his game, even though he's only 5'11", but he's around 200 pounds. And like I said, he scored 29 goals for Bakersfield. He got 15 games look last year. He'd probably get another look too, because at this point, you got to give guys a chance. You never know.
Yeah, and just put this in your pipe and smoke it, Oilers fans. Chris Russell, 2 more years at $4 million. Darnell Nurse is an arbitration eligible RFA next summer. If he has another year like he had this year, he's probably setting himself up for either Jacob Trouba territory where he walks his way to free agency, or they have to pay him big money. And if they have to pay him big money, we're talking $6.5 million because he's starting to score as a defenseman, and I think he's a pretty good defensive defenseman as well. He provides a physical aspect to his game. You've got dead money with Chris Russell, with Koskinen paying him $4.5 million, who might be a $4.5 million backup if they actually go with Mike Smith in net. I mean, this is the disaster that is.
Yeah, track. Like that was the one where the owner should have nixed that. He should have said, "I don't understand why we're quickly signing this guy for this kind of money when we're a cap-strung team." Like that's where the owner, I felt like, should have stepped in and never let that happen.
Now, Peter, I have respect for Ken Holland and I have respect for Dave Tippett, and I'm sure they'll do their best. And I mean, Holland has the challenge of his career in front of him with the Oilers. But I also get the feeling that this was a retirement contract, that he got paid big money by Cates, and his legacy is not going to be sullied if he fails in Edmonton. Yeah. And to me, any general manager who took this job was setting himself up for failure.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't know what it means to interview in an NHL team. I have no idea, but I've done enough stuff with executives in my career that I know when you get into that C-level kind of area, interviews are a two-way street. You are analyzing them because there's a lot of money at stake. There's a lot of jobs at stake. There's a lot of business at stake. You need to understand what you're going into. Mm-hmm. And the first question I would ask Daryl Cates or whoever is on that, on their hiring committee, whatever they use, how much money are you prepared to spend to fix the problems you want this role to inherit?
Right.
Because you spent too much money to get into them, and there's only one way out: time, which you don't have much more of, or money.
Right.
That and then you go down the road of what are you, and that's where you start. That's where I would start. I would go absolutely ruthless from it as looking at it from a business management point of view. Take people out of the way. I would say, you want me to compensate? Then get into the organizational structure and say, how, and this is really ruthless stuff, but we'll compensate on that money spent in other aspects of savings, and we'll find other ways. Mm-hmm. And we will find ways to save money. We will find ways to do different fan engagement to increase revenues in these capacities. We will find things. Everything the Oilers do right now needs to be ripped apart and revisited. Yep. In a new way. Like there's too much there. Get rid of Gretzky, get rid of Coffey, get rid of Messier, get rid of all those guys. Your legacy friends, Kevin Lowe, gone. All these guys you grew up cheering for, they're gone. Yeah. You don't need them. They don't provide any value.
If they're in the alumni box, fine. If they're helping,
give them a free press pass.
Yeah, if they're helping running do what the Leafs give them a nice blue blazer saying that they're an alumni. That's fine. If they're helping running hockey operations, all they've done is screw it up the last decade. So there. All right. Let's take a couple questions.
So Thomas asked, Russ, with Leonard on the Hawks, do they get a wild card position? I like the DeHaan pickup. If he's healthy, he's real good. Yeah, if things go well, they definitely could make the wild card. They're a wild card bubble team.
Yeah.
But that depends on Leonard. That depends on Keith at least doing what he did last year, and that depends on their defense holding up to some degree with DeHaan. So there's ifs there, but there is a chance. We talked about it. I think these guys agree.
Yeah, I think that. I mean, I think the most important thing for them is Strome providing a second line offense that takes the heat off of Taves. I don't know if they're going to put Kane with Strome. Last year, I think it was DeBrincat, and I don't know who the second line winger was. I think they played Taves and Kane together later in the season when they were really hot and trying to get back in the playoffs. But I think that secondary scoring is important. And we have to see how old and decrepit Keith and Seabrook are. If they have a bounce back, they have a real good chance of making the playoffs.
Yeah. Andrew asks, when do bad cap teams start panicking, having to sign RFAs or free space? He wrote mid-August. I think you get into training camp to a certain degree into training camp with the summer cap. I want to say it's like first or second week of September where teams would start to panic. Right? Do you guys agree with that?
Yeah. I think, yeah. Yeah, I agree.
So I think that's the panic point. And look, I did a podcast last night, a big crossover podcast with two different podcasts joining, and we talked about, like Pro Ruff and other players. And one of the criticism of Fletcher on that podcast was, hey, he still held on to all of his good young assets. And I said, I actually like the fact that they did that, because why trade them just for trade's sake? And also, just to bring it up, what if they get into an impasse with Provorov and have to throw one of them in a deal to get a star player or two star players? Or what if they have to throw one of them in a deal to get William Nylander from the Leafs because all of a sudden the Marner money's too big, or even Kapanen or somebody from the Leafs? Or what if, I said, there still could be a trade like that before the season starts.
Yeah.
Why deplete that when there's still that possibility?
No, that's a good point.
Yeah. Okay. That's it. Shut it down.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good, guys. We will be back tomorrow.
All right, one more. There's one more. Sorry.
Okay. Sorry. There you go.
Well, just two more. Biz Angel goes, is Jordan Binnington a one-hit wonder, a true sustainable starter? Yes. If you've ever listened to me, yes. He is. Yes. He will be. Yes. Okay. El Guapo. That's a good name.
Do you know what El Guapo is?
I mean, I know it's handsome.
El Guapo was the name of the main villain in The Three Amigos.
Oh, see, I never saw The Three.
Yeah, the best line in that movie was, I will fill you so full of lead that you can use your what as a pencil.
That was a bad movie. I think I saw 10 minutes of that. Russ, can the Kings trade out of their bad contracts? I mean, not fast enough. You're still going to go through another couple of years of rebuild with the Kings. And unfortunately, Kovalchuk will be one of those bad contracts they have to shed. Jeff Carter is the one that they can't shed because he doesn't want to leave and he has no trade. And that's another one where good luck getting rid of him.
Yeah, I mean, they're stuck with that one, and what may end up happening, Russ, is they end up trading guys that are on shorter deals, like Toffoli. I think Toffoli's got a year left, and I don't know if they can get a lot for guys like Trevor Lewis or Kyle Clifford, or Alec Martinez, who's got 2 years left. There was a lot of talk about him being traded over the before the draft. So
I don't think they get good enough before Quick has to hang it up. That's the bottom line.
Yeah, that's true. All right, good show, guys. We will be back tomorrow with another edition of the Hockey Buzzcast. For Peter Tessier, for Russ Cohen, I'm Michael Agello. Thank you for watching, and remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey.